My husband doubted our daughter's paternity and made my life hell. Now he's crying over his guilt, but I'm not sure we can ever move on. My 24F husband, 31M, and I have 3 children. Our sons look exactly like him, dark skin and dark eyes and hair. But our daughter doesn't. She looks exactly like my great-grandparents. Really pale, blonde, and green-eyed. But apparently he didn't think it was possible that our daughter could look like my great-grandparents. And from the moment he saw her, he told me he wanted a paternity test. At first I refused because I felt it was humiliating and because I didn't think it was necessary because I never cheated on him, and I hoped he would trust me, but he didn't. And for the first 2 months of our daughter's life, he made my life hell. He didn't want to hold her even if she cried desperately while I was doing something else. He never woke up at night to help me with her. He never helped me with anything. And that hurt me so much because with our boys, he was completely different. He helped me all the time with absolutely everything, and he was always there for me after giving birth. But this time, he left me alone, and it was the worst experience of my life. I have no family here. And his entire family, from the moment they saw my daughter, turned their backs on me. I don't have any friends here either. So it was just my daughter and me. She is a colicky baby. So it was very difficult for me to do everything alone, and on top of that, help with our sons. I decided to do the paternity test because one day his entire family came to our house to celebrate my son's birthday, and no one spoke to me. And they didn't want to include my daughter in the photos that my in-laws took of all the grandchildren. So I knew it was stupid to keep waiting for them to come to their senses. Well, the paternity test came back positive, and everyone was shocked, and of course they felt guilty for not having believed in me. Everyone apologized, and my husband even cried when he held our daughter in his arms for the first time, and I know that his apologies were genuine, and that's why I forgave him. But I don't know if I can forgive his family. They treated me really badly and said horrible things about me just a few days after giving birth, and I can't forget their insults or violence. My husband knows that I don't want to see his family, nor do I want them near any of our children, and he told his family. So these last 3 months, it has been just the 5 of us. But it doesn't feel as good as I expected. My husband is constantly apologizing and crying every time he holds our daughter, and I am getting tired of this situation. I want us to be happy as we were before. So how can we move on? My husband suggested that we should start couples therapy. How much can therapy help? Update. 1. So we decided to give therapy a shot. I figured it was worth trying if it could help us get back to where we were before everything blew up. We found a therapist who specializes in couples dealing with trust issues and booked our first session. I went into it with mixed feelings. Part of me was hopeful, but another part was just exhausted from everything that had happened. The first few sessions were rough. The therapist wanted us to talk about the root of our issues, and it felt like reopening a wound that had barely started to heal. My husband was a mess. Every time we talked about our daughter and what had happened, he'd break down in tears, apologizing over and over. It was painful to see him like that, but at the same time, I couldn't help but feel resentful. I kept thinking, if he had just trusted me in the first place, we wouldn't be here. We talked a lot about his doubts and why he had them. He admitted that when our daughter was born, he was immediately struck by how different she looked compared to our sons. He said it felt like his world had crumbled in that instant, and he didn't know how to process it. It wasn't just about her appearance, though. He also confessed that he had underlying insecurities about our relationship that he never addressed. He felt like he wasn't good enough for me, that I might one day leave him, and our daughter's birth brought all those fears to the surface. Hearing that hurt, but it also gave me a new perspective. I realized that his doubts weren't just about our daughter. They were about our entire relationship. He wasn't just questioning her paternity. He was questioning his place in our family. It made me feel guilty for not seeing it sooner, but it also made me angry that he had let his insecurities cause so much damage. The therapist suggested individual therapy for him as well, to work through these issues. He agreed, and I'm glad he did because I think he needs it. But at the same time, I was left with this overwhelming feeling of emptiness. I'd been so focused on making sure our family didn't fall apart that I hadn't really processed my own feelings. And then there's his family. They've been reaching out more, trying to make amends, but I'm not interested. I told my husband that I didn't want them around our kids, and he respected that. But it's still a point of tension. They keep sending gifts for the kids, trying to worm their way back in, and it makes my blood boil every time I see a package from them. I don't want their guilt gifts. I want them to stay away. Despite the progress we're making in therapy, I can't shake this feeling that something's still off. My husband and I are talking more, but there's this distance between us that wasn't there before. It's like we're both walking on eggshells, afraid to upset the fragile peace we've managed to build. I miss the way things used to be, but I don't know if we'll ever get back to that place. The therapist keeps telling us that healing takes time, but I'm starting to wonder if time is enough. I'm so tired of feeling like this. Tired of the constant apologies, the tears, the guilt. I want to move on, but I don't know how to when everything still feels so raw. I'm starting to think that maybe therapy isn't the magic solution I was hoping for. It's helping us communicate, sure, but it's also forcing us to confront things that are really painful. And while I know that's part of the process, I'm worried that all this digging might unearth more issues than it resolves. I guess what I'm saying is that I'm scared. Scared that we won't be able to fix this, that our marriage will always have this dark cloud hanging over it. I love my husband, but I don't know how to get past the hurt, and I'm terrified that one day, all this pain will become too much for us to bear. Update 2. It's been a couple of months since we started therapy, and I wish I could say that everything is getting better. But honestly, things have just gotten more complicated. My husband has been doing individual therapy, and while I can see that he's trying, there are moments where I feel like I'm still carrying the weight of this entire situation on my own. One of the hardest things to deal with has been the change in our relationship dynamic. Before all this happened, I always felt like we were equals, partners in every sense of the word. But now, it's like I'm the one who has to hold everything together. My husband is constantly apologizing, constantly seeking reassurance, and it's exhausting. I don't want to be his emotional crutch. I want to be his wife, his equal. There's also been an unexpected consequence of all this therapy. It's made me question things I never thought I'd question. The therapist encouraged us to be completely open with each other, to share our deepest fears and insecurities. And while that sounds great in theory, in practice, it's been a lot harder to handle. During one session, my husband confessed that he's always struggled with feelings of inadequacy, not just in our relationship, but in his life in general. He talked about how he's always felt like he's had to prove himself, to be the best at everything, and how that pressure has worn him down over the years. He said that when our daughter was born and didn't look like him, it felt like the ultimate confirmation of his worst fears. That he wasn't good enough, that he was being replaced. I understood where he was coming from, but it also made me realize something that I hadn't fully acknowledged before. I've been feeling a lot of resentment toward him. Resentment for how he treated me, for how he doubted me, for how he let his family treat me. And the more we talked about his insecurities, the more I realized that I have my own issues that I've been ignoring. I've been so focused on trying to fix things that I haven't really taken the time to process how all of this has affected me. I've been bottling up my anger, my hurt, my frustration, and now it's all starting to come out in ways that I didn't expect. I find myself snapping at my husband over small things, getting irritated with the kids more easily, and just feeling generally overwhelmed by everything. And then there's his family. They've been trying to rebuild their relationship with us, but I'm not interested. They've done too much damage, and I don't think I can ever forgive them for how they treated me. My husband has been caught in the middle, trying to mediate between us, but it's just added more stress to an already tense situation. One night, after a particularly difficult therapy session, I broke down and told my husband everything I've been feeling. I told him that I'm tired of being the strong one, that I'm tired of carrying the weight of the situation, that I'm angry and hurt and I don't know how to move past it. I told him that I don't know if therapy is enough, that I'm scared we'll never get back to where we were before. He listened to everything I said, and for the first time in a long time, he didn't apologize. Instead, he just held me while I cried, and for a moment it felt like we were back to being partners again. But even in that moment of comfort, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still missing. The next day, my husband suggested that we take a break from therapy. He said that he thinks we need some time to just be together. without the pressure of constantly analyzing our relationship. I agreed, but part of me is worried that taking a break will just push us further apart. We decided to go on a family trip, just the five of yous, to try and reconnect. I thought it might be a good idea to get away from everything and focus on each other. But even on the trip, there were moments where the tension was palpable. My husband was trying so hard to make things right, but I could tell he was still struggling with his own issues. And I was still struggling with mine. There was one moment that really stood out to me. We were at the beach, and our daughter was playing in the sand with her brothers. My husband was watching them with this look of pure love and pride on his face, and for a moment I felt a glimmer of hope. But then he turned to me and said, "I'm so sorry for everything I've put you through." And just like that, the moment was ruined. I don't want his apologies anymore. I want us to move on, to find a way to be happy again. But I'm starting to realize that it's not that simple. The wounds from this whole ordeal run deep, and I'm not sure if they'll ever fully heal. I'm trying to stay optimistic, but it's hard when every day feels like a battle. I love my husband, and I want to make this work, but I'm also starting to wonder if love is enough. Can we really move past this, or are we just prolonging the inevitable? Update 3. It's been a year since I first posted, and I wish I could say that everything is better. But the truth is that things have taken an unexpected turn. After our family trip, my husband and I decided to give therapy another shot, but this time with a different approach. We agreed to focus more on rebuilding our relationship rather than dwelling on the past. But as we started to dig deeper into our issues, we uncovered some things that neither of us were prepared for. During one of our sessions, the therapist asked us to talk about our childhoods and how our past experiences shaped our current relationship. At first, it seemed like a standard exercise, but it quickly became clear that there were deeper issues at play. My husband started opening up about his childhood, revealing things that I had never heard before. He talked about how his parents were always hypercritical, especially his father. Nothing he did was ever good enough. He was always striving to be perfect, to win their approval, but it never came. He confessed that this constant pressure to be perfect carried over into our marriage, and that's why he was so devastated when our daughter didn't look like him. It wasn't just about her appearance. It was about the fear that he had failed again, that he wasn't good enough as a husband or a father. Hearing this broke my heart. I never realized how deep his insecurities ran, and it made me see his actions in a different light. But at the same time, it also made me confront my own issues. I realized that I had been so focused on being the perfect wife and mother that I hadn't allowed myself to truly feel or express my own emotions. I had been bottling everything up, trying to keep the peace, and it was tearing me apart. As we continued therapy, it became clear that we both had a lot of unresolved trauma that we needed to work through, individually and as a couple. But just as we started making progress, something unexpected happened. I found out I was pregnant again. The news came as a shock to both of us. We hadn't been planning on having another child, especially not with everything we were going through. But there it was, a positive pregnancy test staring back at me. I didn't know how to feel. Part of me was terrified. How could we bring another child into this mess? But another part of me was hopeful, thinking maybe this baby could be a fresh start for us. My husband was overjoyed when I told him. He said that this was a sign that we were meant to be together, that we could get through anything. But I couldn't share his enthusiasm. The truth is, I was scared. Scared that we weren't ready, that our relationship wasn't strong enough to handle another child. And most of all, scared that the same doubts and insecurities that tore us apart before would come back to haunt us. As the pregnancy progressed, my fears only grew. My husband was trying so hard to be supportive, but I could see the cracks in his facade. He was still struggling with his own issues, and now we had this new challenge on top of everything else. I was overwhelmed, and the stress started to take a toll on my health. Then, at 22 weeks, I went into premature labor. The doctors tried everything they could to stop it, but it was too late. We lost the baby, a little girl. The grief was unbearable. My husband and I were both devastated, and for a while it felt like our world had completely shattered. We couldn't even look at each other without breaking down. The loss of our baby brought back all the pain and trauma we had been trying to work through, and it felt like we were back at square one. But something strange happened in the midst of our grief. As we mourned the loss of our daughter, we also started to come together in a way that we hadn't before. For the first time, we were truly honest with each other about our fears, our pain, and our hopes for the future. There were no more apologies, no more trying to fix things, just raw, unfiltered emotions. We decided to take a break from therapy and focus on healing in our own way. We spent a lot of time just being together, without the pressure of trying to fix our relationship. We talked about our daughter, about our other children, about our dreams and fears. And slowly we started to find our way back to each other. It wasn't easy. There were days when the grief was overwhelming, when the weight of everything we had been through felt like too much to bear. But there were also moments of joy, moments when we could see a glimmer of the love and connection that had brought us together in the first place. As time passed, we started to rebuild our lives. My husband and I made a conscious effort to support each other, to be there for each other in ways that we hadn't before. We focused on our children, on creating a stable and loving environment for them. And slowly but surely, we began to heal. One day, as we were watching our kids play in the backyard, my husband turned to me and said, "I don't know what the future holds, but I know that I want to face it with you." It was a simple statement, but it meant the world to me. For the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of peace, a sense that we could get through anything as long as we were together. We're still a work in progress, and I know that there will be challenges ahead. But I also know that we've come a long way from where we started. We've faced our demons, and while they haven't disappeared, we've learned how to live with them. We've learned how to be honest with each other, how to support each other, and most importantly, how to forgive each other. I don't know if our marriage will ever be the same as it was before all this happened, but maybe that's okay. Maybe we don't need to go back to the way things were. Maybe we just need to keep moving forward one step at a time and trust that we'll find our way together. So that's where we are now. Still healing, still growing, but also still together. And for the first time in a long time, I feel hopeful about the future. Not just for me and my husband, but for our entire family. Because at the end of the day, that's what matters most. Being there for each other, no matter what.